I ventured to the Australian snowfields and braved the cold, ice and snow to 3D print in the toughest conditions just so that I could build a snow globe in the snow. Snow globes have been around since the late 19th century and persist as an interest in modern culture. When QIDI Tech sent me one of their new Q2 3D printers, we agreed that a snow globe would be the perfect test for its capabilities. A 370-degree hot end, active chamber heating, and when you add the QIDI box, you get multicolour and filament drying too. This is glass fibre filled ABS that can be printed straight from the heated QIDI box. This is a simple 2-colour print I designed that we'll get back to later. Back to the snow globe, and I went on the search for one to salvage for the globe part. It turns out that it's hard to get a snow globe during July in Australia, but I did manage to order some of these ones on back order. I scoured Marketplace for something to tide me over in the meantime. Grogu's globe will do the job for now. I took some measurements and designed my version of an Australian snow globe, complete with wildlife, snow and other things you might find in the snow. Next, it was on to the fluid part of the globe, and I grabbed 3 viscous fluids to find the best mix for filling it: glycerin, baby oil and lube. Combined with some different sized snow particles, I landed on what I felt was the best fluid for the job. I don't recommend lube for snow globes. Back to 3D printing, and I used QIDI Studio to colour the snow globe parts. I stuck with a design with no supports and only 3 colours to minimise print time. It prints in about 2 hours. I monitored the printer's power consumption using a smart plug. Did I mention that I'll be running the QIDI Q2 off this lithium-ion portable power supply in the snow? I'll be using the AC supply to run the printer. Hopefully it will last for a couple of hours. So I set the printer up off-grid on my patio and let it do its thing. That all went to plan, and there was still 45% power remaining. The next day, I packed the car and headed off for the Australian snowfields, a couple of hours down the road. That's about a 1 stop road trip. Australia's alpine country isn't very elevated relative to some parts of the world, but we do have snow in a small part of the country for part of the year. And where I'm headed, apparently there is a lot of snow right now. And as the weather closed in around us, we were nearly there, with one last stop to fit snow chains. And it was starting to get cold. As we approached the top of the mountain and the weather turned nasty, I was beginning to regret my choice of location for this video, but we had arrived at Mount Hotham and there was no turning back now. After a quick look around, we kept driving through the village to a quieter area just outside of the Alpine National Park. Snowshoes on, I started unpacking the car. This was tough going, and I knew that with just one slip the equipment or me would be damaged. But I managed to safely set up in this little spot which would be my workshop for the afternoon. I hit the power button and was relieved to see everything fire up despite the wet conditions. This print uses ABS filament, which requires a hotter nozzle and bed temperature than your average filament, and in these conditions, it's probably impossible to get a good print or any print without a heated chamber like the QIDI Q2 has. I started the print off a file on a USB drive. The printer went through its startup and bed leveling procedures while I monitored battery usage like a hawk. But then I noticed that the printhead had been parked some time and I investigated. It turns out that with sub-zero temperatures there was no way the printer could achieve a chamber temperature of 60 degrees which I had sliced the part for, and hence there was no way to start the print. Unfortunately, I couldn't change the chamber temperature at this stage of the print, so I cancelled the print and loaded another file off the USB that I sliced for a chamber temperature of only 45 degrees. After a nervous wait, the print started and we were in business, but at the expense of some precious battery power. The first layer looked good and I was relieved. As I watched on, the snow started to fall again, and I was worried something might short out on either the printer or power supply. Both are about as water resistant as a toaster. But the printer kept ticking along and battery usage was looking okay, I think. I was kept busy with trying to keep water out of the electronics and my cameras. At the halfway mark, we were looking good. In my planning, I had overlooked the poop chute, and the printer was pooping straight onto the snow like the local wombats. The print was now well on its way. Remember that purple thing I printed from glass fibre filled ABS earlier? Well, I got a little distracted with that while the printer did its thing. And then, with the battery life plummeting with the ambient temperature, I made the call to bump the chamber temperature down again in an effort to save power. I figured it would remain warm enough in there at this late stage of the print. I lowered it to 30 degrees. As I watched on, I was fairly sure that the print was going to be completed, and then it was done. I breathed a sigh of relief. The battery had only just gone the distance. I picked up my poop, packed up my temporary snowy workshop, and only left behind my balls. But the day wasn't quite over yet. We still had to hike through the snow to arrive at our real-life snow dome for the night. After a long day, we warmed up and recharged our own batteries as the sun set over the mountains. It was a cold, short night before I got up early to watch the sunrise. And it was now time to assemble the snow globe we 3D printed yesterday. Not the easiest task in freezing conditions, but I got there. Here I'm adding 1 part glycerin to 2 parts water, which is nearly frozen. I failed to consider that these wouldn't mix properly at this temperature, so it was a little cloudy, just like the morning. I let the snow globe settle over a warm breakfast and then hiked back out of the camp and returned to our car before a sunny drive home. Back at the workshop, and the snow globes that I ordered earlier had arrived. Coincidentally, the dimensions were almost identical to the Grogu one off Marketplace. I made a few more tweaks to the design now that I was no longer restricted by battery power. I made these kits as a thank you for my patrons, and there are also a handful available on my website.